All right. It looks like we are live. Welcome back to yet another BriHive live stream. Today, we are diving deeper into the deep hole that we are calling Diddy's life. He cannot seem to stay out of the courtroom. We talked about his indictment. What was that, last week or the week before that? Now we're talking about him getting sued by two more people in civil cases, basically accusing him of pretty much the same thing that a lot of other people have been accusing him of. And actually, one of the complaints that we're going to talk about today kind of goes through everyone, I think everyone that has sued him so far, to the point where I was like, oh, I didn't read that one. Oh, I didn't read that one. So there are a couple of the lawsuits against Diddy that we have actually not covered on this case. So today we are going to be talking about Don Richard. I don't know why I thought an S was at the end of her name. I need to fix that. Don Richard, she was a member of Dainty Kane, and apparently she's had some issues with Diddy since 2005. Okay, so we're going to be getting into her lawsuit, which is crazy long. It's 55 pages, but a lot of it is just the causes of actions, basically repeating everything that was already put into the facts. So we probably won't go through every single cause of action into detail. And then we have Thalia Graves, which is the newest person to sue. Don sued him, I believe, last week? No, 2 weeks ago. And we were going to cover it on the case, but then I was not on the channel, but I was not able to cover it that day. And then he got arrested, and then it was just a lot going on. So she sued him about 2 weeks ago. Then he was arrested. And now we got Thalia Graves suing him for something that happened in around 2000. So he is still getting sued under this law that is allowing people to bring these SA claims years and years later in New York. All of them are suing him in New York. So we are going to jump into those cases today. If you're watching live, make sure you go ahead and drop a chat in the live, letting us know that you are here live. We're still waiting for people to come in. I actually started like on time today, which is a shocker, surprise, but we are here. I'm going to go ahead and see if we can set our like goal today. And I know there's not a lot of people in here yet, but we are at 3 likes with 4 people watching live. So we are going to go ahead and set our like goal for the stream at 50 likes, and maybe we get to see our friend Bossy B come across the screen to celebrate hitting the like goal today. So if you haven't already, please do make sure that you hit the BriHive, hit the like button so that we can try to reach our goal today. I'm gonna have Bossy B bring us in. Where are you at, girly? Boom. And we're going to jump into the chat, which is going to be a pretty quick chat because we didn't have that many comments come in while I was talking. No, actually, we had one comment come in from Kimmy Locker, our member, moderator, consultant, paralegal of the channel. Hello and welcome in. Nice to have you in the live stream and then also in the back channel. Have anyone on the live stream right now, have you seen these cases? Because the details are pretty like, this is his MO. He keeps doing the same things over and over and over again to multiple people, which I feel like at the end of the day, that's going to make his case easier to prove because he has an MO. Like, this is what he does, right? So I just think that with all the civil cases, with all the, well, not with all, but with the criminal case coming forward, these people are probably going to have a really easy time actually proving their case. We also have Nissa Howard in the house. Hello and welcome in. Nice to have you in the live stream tonight. I hope everything is going wonderful for you. Y'all let me know what y'all think about the case so far, or not the case so far. If you've read into the Don Richard and the Thalia Graves case, or watched one of your favorite YouTubers already cover the case, let me know what y'all think so far. For me, it's just, like I said, his MO is being established. I think it's going to make it easier for him to get convicted criminally, although it has a higher burden of proof. And I think it's going to be easier for these people to get some money. But the question is there going to be any money left over by time he's done forfeiting his assets in the criminal case, paying Cassie $30 million, paying all, like, he has like 10 or so lawsuits, if not more, civil lawsuits against him of people asking him for thousands and millions of dollars. I think Don Richard's lawsuit asked him for like at least $8 million. So I know he's a billionaire now. He's got his house that he's trying to put up for collateral, which greatly keeps getting denied. But at what point is he going to be running out of money? And I know his net worth is $1 billion, but it's part of that $1 billion. I'm assuming it's also the debt that he might have had on his house. I know he paid off the debt to one of the houses, so that might also be a factor in it. And then like the debt that he has in his businesses, they're not really, I don't think, taking into account of that situation and everything. But he's going to sell a plane, so he'll get some more money. But anyways, I don't see how he's going to have enough money to pay off all of these people. Granted, he's a billionaire and they're only asking for like in the millions range, not like 100 million each. So maybe he will be able to pay them off and be okay. I think that R. Kelly definitely had a lot more people that ended up draining his bank to the point where when he was facing his criminal trial, he was pretty much broke, okay? And Diddy is kind of far away from that right now, but I wonder if it's going to get worse with the criminal case and everyone coming after him in the criminal case. Is he going to be able to pay his lawyers? I honestly don't think a lot of his money was really tied up in his trafficking, the alleged trafficking. Do we really need to say alleged anymore? I don't know, but we are, because the cases are still pending. I don't know if his money was actually wrapped up in the trafficking. I don't know if he was getting paid by people to be able to go to these parties, have their fun, what he calls it. I don't know if people were paying for that or if he was just spending his money and his record label's money to do that. I would like to know. Maybe it helped him close business deals. Like I think that was in Don's lawsuit, said something helped him close a business deal after he punched Cassie in the stomach. Okay, so maybe that's how he's getting the money. I don't know how that will relate to him closing the deal, other than them just not caring that he's beating on Cassie in front of them. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into Thalia Graves. Her lawsuit is actually a little bit shorter, and she is the newest person to file a lawsuit against Diddy. I am at the point where I'm questioning how many more people are going to file lawsuits against Diddy before we hit the end of the year, okay? Remember, Cassie started this in November of 2023, and we're still going and going and going. So let's have Bossy B bring us in so that we can go ahead and jump into Thalia Graves' lawsuit and see what we have going on. So this is not the Dainty Kane lawsuit. This is another lady that apparently was dating someone that worked for Diddy at the time in 1999, 2000. And she went to meet up with Diddy in order to help her boyfriend's career, which I think, in my opinion, is quite odd of a reason to go and meet up with the music producers. Why would they be talking to you about your boyfriend's performance unless you're like his manager, but he's an executive, so how are you his manager? I don't really get what was the point of calling her over there. It sounds suspicious from the jump to me, but maybe that's how that industry works. I don't work in the industry, so how the heck would I freaking know? So let's go ahead and jump into her rendition of what happened to her back in 2000, dealing with Diddy and his bodyguard. He has an accomplice, and this one is going to be his bodyguard helping him out, according to Thalia, with these allegations. So let's see what we got. We got Thalia suing Sean Combs with Joseph Sherman, who is the bodyguard, and then a bunch of other of Diddy's businesses. We're not going to go all through that. This is a complaint for a jury trial, and we are in the Southern District of New York. She is suing. She goes ahead and introduces the case to us and says, in or around summer of 2001, plaintiff's life was violently knocked off course when defendants Sean Combs and Joseph Sherman viciously R-worded her. I'm going to have a hard time reading through this and not saying the words that YouTube does not like us to say, but we're going to try to make it through it. Viciously R-worded her at the Bad Boy Record Studio in New York City. Plaintiff was 25 at the time and dating one of Combs' employees, a relationship that Combs exploited to lure plaintiff into meeting him and Sherman alone. Again, I think the whole setup to get her over there was weird, but we'll get into it. Once they successfully sequestered plaintiff, Combs and Sherman gave plaintiff a drink, likely laced with drugs, that eventually caused her briefly to lose consciousness. She awoke to find herself bound and restrained. Combs and Sherman proceeded to brutally SA her and violate her. Combs mercilessly R-rated her through both. You guys can read it. Sherman forcefully slammed plaintiff into a table, slapped her, and repeatedly thrusted his man parts into her mouth. Both men were undeterred by plaintiff's cry her cries for help throughout the attack. Plaintiff never recovered from the defendant's violent R word. She had suicidal thoughts and ideations and has received extensive psychological treatment because of defendant's attack. Now, when you talk about the psychological issues, that now puts your psychological issues at play here. So if this ends up going to trial, best trust and believe her psychological medical records are going to be at play, and potentially her other medical records, because let's say she got in an accident at some point and she had a physical injury. Those records will also come into play because maybe she got therapy for those injuries. I'm not saying that happened, but when you start talking about psychological issues because of something that happened to you, people get to be all up in your business, all beyond the HIPAA, okay? HIPAA is not going to protect you from having to put your medical records on display because now you are claiming psychological issues that you had to get treatment for because of what you went through. Not saying that she shouldn't say it if that's what she went through, but also be prepared for them to put all your doctor's records out there for the streets to hear, especially if anything is publicized and live streamed and all of the things. For decades, she remained silent and did not report the crime out of fear that defendants would use their power to ruin her life, as they had repeatedly, explicitly threatened to do. To this day, plaintiff suffers from severe depression, anxiety, and panic attacks and still lives in fear of defendants. And for those of you watching live, also let me know, I know when people are essayed or they go through something like this, it takes a long time for people to come out and kind of speak up. My question to you would, do you think that their voice would be taken, and I'm saying this because you hear people saying, oh, well, they're all just kind of after money. Do you think that their voice would be stronger if they didn't file a lawsuit, but maybe just testified against them in the criminal trial? Or do you think these lawsuits are necessary to give the criminal trial the ammo that they need in order to convict them? Or do you think, like what some people have already said, they're out for money? I don't know if the lawsuits, well, I mean, I guess if they're damaged, they're entitled to get money for the damages they suffered. But also I feel like this law has been in place for a while and it's kind of taken people a while to come out and to file it. And again, like I said, I don't know if he's going to have any money after it. But also getting a ruling finding him liable for doing these things might also serve as justice to the people filing these lawsuits. So y'all let me know whether y'all think that these lawsuits heightened the chance of the government succeeding in the criminal charge, or do you think these are more going towards the person individually and trying to get money? Is it going to even help the criminal case? Let's see here. And I asked because I know I got a little distracted. I asked because Cassie's freaking lawsuit is the basis at this point, the basis of the criminal one. So do you think these ones are going to get added into the criminal case? I think that was my question in short. It just took me a long time to get there. Okay, so as progress, any progress plaintiff had made in healing from the attack over the years was dramatically reversed on or around November 27, 2023, when she learned for the first time that Combs and Sherman had video recorded the horrific R word 22 years before and had shown the video to multiple men seeking to publicly degrade and humiliate both plaintiff and her boyfriend. And if you guys remember the case that we covered with that model, I forget her name, as the Joy, I forgot what her last name was, that we covered a couple of months ago, she also was recorded while he did these type of things to her in her lawsuit. Allegedly, that's what she's alleging in her lawsuit, right? Plaintiff, and that's why I say the MO just keeps going, especially hers, I think was around 1990 and in 2000s as well. So at that time, he was just like allegedly solo doing this to people and they're recording it against their will, which is absolutely insane. Plaintiff could not believe that defendant would record themselves committing such a gruesome crime and then proceed proudly and widely to disseminate the recording of it. She was distraught and sunk into a deep depression. She again considered ending her life. This action seeks redress for defendants' brutalizing, misogynistic, and violent attacks on plaintiffs starting in 2001 with their R word and continuing in the subsequent years as they compounded her humiliation by showing the video of the SA to others, which is kind of, that is traumatizing to find out later that someone you knew they did this to you, right? But then to find out years later, 20 years later, that they are also disseminating it, that I can only imagine what she's going through for that. Just thinking that she's trying to get over it and then finding out that other people have seen it. Yeah. And so she asked for a jury trial so that the jury can decide whether they think that Diddy did anything wrong, and Sherman as well. Did he do anything wrong here? We're going to get into the factual allegations. Plaintiff, she immigrated to New York, to Rego Park, Queens, where she completed her education, and that's where she was living when she met Combs. Defendant Combs, also known by his stage name Puff Daddy, Puffy, P. Diddy, Diddy, but Brother Love and Love, is a prominent rapper, record executive, and businessman. He rose to fame in the 1990s with his record label Bad Boy and continued to be a notable figure in the music industry in the following years. Combs has continued to amass wealth and power through his business ventures in the music, fashion, fragrance, beverage, marketing, film, television, and media industries. Bad Boy Enterprises is the foundation of Combs' wealth and power. Bad Boy has sold over 500 million records through its lucrative distribution deals with the top music companies in the world, and has signed acclaimed hip-hop and R&B artists, including the Notorious B.I.G., Mary J. Blige, and Usher. Combs later found CEOPCO and all of these other things. He did beverages, he did the fragrances, he did media, he did everything. We're not going to go into all of that. We know what he does. She goes on to say, as detailed below, Combs has a long history of violence, of abusing and R-wording women, and there have been several civil lawsuits filed against Combs in the past year alleging SV and abuse. On September 16, 2024, Combs was arrested and charged with racketeering and ST. He was denied bail. And so she's bringing up all of these other instances, all the other civil lawsuits, all the other, the criminal lawsuit, to kind of prove that MO. You should believe me, court, because he has done this to so many other people. And you should believe that he's done this to so many other people because all these people have sued him. Plus, the government thought that his crimes were serious enough to file a criminal complaint against him. So they have to have enough evidence to even try to indict him, is basically where she's trying to get at there. So I don't know if that's helping her here in the introduction or not, but it is a point to make, especially like at the point of going to trial. Defendant Sherman, also known as Big Joe, was employed by Combs as his bodyguard and head of security during the relevant time period described herein, and served in various roles in the Combs Corporation. Sherman is also the founder of Rhymes and Dimes Magazine, Inc., a New York State registered corporation, and through or in connection with that company produces and distributes adult films, is what we're going to call it. On information and belief, he has often distributed videos of his and or his friends' SAs through his adult films video. Plaintiff met the defendant Combs in or around 1999 or 2000 through her then boyfriend, who was an executive at Bad Boy. In addition to working together, plaintiff's boyfriend and Combs had a close personal relationship. Plaintiff frequently visited her boyfriend at the Bad Boy studio in New York City and attended events hosted at Combs' residences. Over time, plaintiff became familiar with Combs, and he knew about her relationship with her boyfriend. Defendant tricks, drugs, and violently R-words plaintiff. In or around the summer of 2001, plaintiff received a call from Combs concerning her boyfriend's employment at Bad Boy. Why are you calling his girlfriend to tattletale on him? He's not doing good at his work. What are you going to do to make your boyfriend perform better at work? I would be so confused if somebody called me about somebody else's work. If they called him in, yeah, sure. If she worked for him, call her in, sure. But calling me about my boyfriend, not even my husband's work ethic, that part is a strange way to lure someone to where they want you to go. But it seemed to work. She listened to it. He told her he wanted to meet with her in person to discuss her boyfriend's supposed performance issues. Her boyfriend was determined to climb up the ladder at Combs' record label as his romantic partner. Plaintiff was committed to helping him. Plaintiff agreed to meet with Combs. In retrospect, it was evidently sick and twisted way of using his ownership of Entitled at Bad Boy and its affiliate entities to abuse plaintiff, and also shows his power and ability to humiliate her boyfriend, his executive. Again, don't know why they would call you, but they did. A few hours later, Combs arrived at plaintiff's mother's residence in Queens with Sherman, who was employed by Combs as his bodyguard at the time. Sherman was driving an SUV and Combs was in the back seat. After plaintiff entered the vehicle, Combs offered her a glass of wine, which she accepted. I also think that's crazy that they, opening containers and driving around, but also it's the early 2000s. So I'm assuming that law was in place that you can't drive around with open containers, but do laws apply to celebrities? Apparently, Diddy thinks they do not apply to him because he's drinking wine in the back of the SUV. Other thing I thought was strange about this, I understand that he's a celebrity, but why is he picking you up from your mom's house? I would not want that man to know where my parents live or where I live, but especially not where my parents live. Maybe she didn't know he was that bad at that time, but why he gotta pick you up? Anyways, he gave her wine in the backseat of a car. Combs began discussing his alleged concerns about her boyfriend's performance at work. Meanwhile, as plaintiff drank what had been handed to her, she started to feel lightheaded, dizzy, and physically weak. In retrospect, it is clear that Combs had caused a drug to be put into plaintiff's drink, as a few sips of wine had never impacted her that way. Combs and Sherman drove plaintiff to the Bad Boy studio in Manhattan. When they arrived and plaintiff tried to get out of the car, she realized that she was feeling odd and found it difficult to walk. She assumed this was her fault and did her best to act normal and followed Combs as he led her eventually to a couch in a private room in the Bad Boy studio. She later came to understand this was Combs' personal lounge and office at the Bad Boy studio, which also makes sense. She probably didn't want to be seen like as a lightweight. Oh, I only had one glass of wine and now I'm stumbling all over the place. So I could definitely understand her saying, her feeling like it was her fault. Combs sat down on the couch next to plaintiff and continued speaking with her. Plaintiff began feeling even more woozy and sedated. She then lost consciousness. When plaintiff regained consciousness, she was naked and her hands were tied behind her back with what felt like a plastic grocery bag. Plaintiff shouted for help. In response, Sherman lifted her up from the couch and forcefully slammed her face down on what was apparently a pool table. Shortly thereafter, Combs entered the room naked. Combs reached for a container of lubricant that smelled like menthol, and proceeded to apply it to his man parts. He then bent plaintiff over the table, causing her feet to dangle above the floor, forcefully held her down, and penetrated her through the buttocks area without her consent. Plaintiff is 4 feet and 11 inches tall and weighed only 103 pounds at the time. Plaintiff is unable to move. Plaintiff was unable to move, totally overpowered physically, in addition to being drugged and bound. I know I'm doing analysis. I think this paragraph will be a little bit stronger if she also pointed out the size difference of Diddy. I don't know how tall Diddy is, and he was kind of skinny back then, but even being a man, he's probably 9 times out of 10 is going to be much stronger than her. And I'm pretty sure he's a lot taller than 4'11". So I think added in his height and his approximate size would have made that paragraph a little bit stronger as far as saying he overpowered me. Give us a little bit more detail about how he overpowered you other than the fact that he's a man, right? Plaintiff screamed out in pain, but Combs continued to violently, through the buttocks area, R-word her. He easily physically overpowered her, smashing her head down on the pool table while she futilely tried to wiggle out from under him. I'm gonna call it wiggle. Is wriggle a word? During the brutal attack, plaintiff vomited into her mouth and on the table. At one point, she involuntarily Number 2, Combs was undeterred. He wiped himself off, applied more lubricant, and without any acknowledgement of plaintiff's distress, proceeded to then penetrate her through her lady parts. Plaintiff experienced intense pain and burning sensation in her lady parts and her buttocks. Plaintiff, this one is so hard. It's so hard. They have a lot of words that I think YouTube will be really mad at me about. Plaintiff continued to scream for help because of the extreme pain she felt as Combs penetrated her over and over. She then lost consciousness again. The next time she regained consciousness, plaintiff was on the couch and Sherman was standing in front of her with his bare man part in her face. Sherman slapped plaintiff in the face and forcefully inserted his man part into her mouth. Sherman slapped her yet again and continued to thrust his man part into plaintiff's mouth. Plaintiff once again lost consciousness. When she next awoke, plaintiff was on the couch, naked and alone in the room. Plaintiff was in severe pain and distress. Her butt and her lady part burned, her face and wrists were bruised, and her genital area smelled strongly of menthol. She felt a liquid, presumably semen, dripping out from inside her. Her dress was thrown over her, her purse was on the couch next to her, and her bra was on the floor nearby. She did not see her underpants. Terrified that Combs and Sherman will return, plaintiff quickly got dressed and bolted out of the studio room where she had been R-worded. Still dizzy and weak, plaintiff called a livery livery driver that her family regularly hired and knew well. The driver picked her up from outside Bad Boy Studios. She was just disheveled, crying uncontrollably and suffering from agonizing pain. The driver drove her to the hospital and tried to convince her to report the R word and get an R word kit, but she was unable to leave the car, shaking and crying hysterically and terrified of what Combs would do to her and her family if she reported him. And I think here, I'm kind of judging the writing. Why was she terrified that he would do something to her family before the actual threats came? Or had she experienced threats before that? I could just forget that she experienced threats before that because I read this like on Tuesday. Or no, I think I read it last night. But I could just be forgetting what the threats were and if there were any threats before. But anyways, I'll jump back into it and see what it actually says while I'm just trying to remember everything. The aftermath and impact of the R word on plaintiff. Plaintiff sustained serious physical injuries in the aftermath of the R word. As noted, she had burning in her lady parts and butt and bruising on her wrist and her face. In the days after the assault, she suffered prolonged anal bleeding. Sorry, I missed that one. And hemorrhoids. Because of Combs' power and notoriety, plaintiff was afraid to report what had happened. She was involved in a contentious divorce and custody battle at the time and feared that reporting the R word would cause her to lose custody of her young child. And then I also forgot when I said, why was she scared immediately? She's also dating one of the executives. So she probably did not want her executive man to get fired. And then now she got a divorce case where she got all this other stuff going on. So I guess I can see why she didn't report it initially, but just being afraid for her family, whatever. Let's go on. I don't know. Plaintiff confided in her boyfriend, Combs' employee, hoping he would comfort her and support her. But instead of supporting her, he discouraged her from disclosing the assault, telling her that it could negatively impact his own career. I think that's probably what she was trying to protect in the initial part of things, and probably didn't want him to be mad at her thinking that she did it on purpose, right? Following the assault and multiple times over the years, both Combs and Sherman contacted plaintiff and warned her to be silent, threatening repercussions, including plaintiff potentially losing custody of her son if she ever disclosed the assault. Because of their enormous power in the industry, including through their ownership of and positions at the Combs Corporation, plaintiff knew that they could follow through on their threats. Okay, now, y'all don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me at this one. But when I was reading this part, it kind of started to dawn on me with all the other cases going on and all the other people that he's probably done this to allegedly that has not reported it and has not done their own lawsuit. It's a little odd to me that they will continue to call her years later to threaten her, because to me, I'm like, if they did it to a lot of people, how would they even remember who they did it to be calling them years later? Not saying that she's lying, but I think it's odd. Do they just keep a list of everyone that they assaulted and follow up with them every couple of years and say, hey, you better not tell on me? I wonder what would bring it up to the point where they're calling her years later to be like, hey, if you telling me I'm going to make you lose your son, I'm going to make you disappear. I think that's a bit odd. Maybe the next couple of months, but years later, I feel like he would have forgot that he did it to that particular person, because they're just doing it, in my opinion, the way that these cases are coming out. In my opinion, they're doing it to a lot of people. How are they remembering who to call and who they're threatening? Is it a cycle? I don't know. I think that part's weird. Let me know what y'all think about it, or if that gave y'all any ideas how they're remembering to call certain people to threaten them. Like the Don Richard things, I could understand. She's in Dainty Kane. She's kind of an important part of his career. Also joined a different group, the Dirty Money. I didn't even know that was a thing. But until I read Don's lawsuit. So I guess I just wasn't paying attention to Diddy at that time. I guess I was pretty young. And I'm also not a fan of him. I don't listen to a lot of Diddy songs. Maybe other artists that were on his record label, but I don't really listen to Diddy. Diddy is not, I don't know. He can't rap. Okay. What was I going with? I just thought that was weird. Let me know if y'all think that's weird. Why is he still following up with her? I can understand Don from Dainty Kane. Not saying Thalia, you're not important, but it's not like she was in one of his music groups. It's not like she was on the label. It's not like she was the executive. It's not like she stopped dating the executive. I just don't see the point of them following up with her if they're doing it so much to other people. Unless I said he hired someone to make sure he threatens them on a yearly basis to make sure they don't tell. Okay, so plaintiff told close friends that Combs and Sherman had drugged and savagely R-worded her, but as noted, was afraid to report the attack to police out of fear that defendants will follow through on their threats. Sad part about this case is just because you tell your friends doesn't mean it happened, and they can't really testify to the fact that you told them that. They can testify to like she talked about it and then like her behavior and she was scared and whatever, but she can't really testify. They can't really testify and say, well, she told me it happened, so it must have happened. The only people that can testify is Combs, Sherman, and her, and she's saying that there's a video, so hopefully finding that video. Telling us that you told your friends, that's not really going to help your case, honestly. They can testify to your behavior after for sure, but not telling them. So this attorney allegedly, or not allegedly, she's supposed to be really good at doing like these SA claims. So to me, she should know that that's not really going to help her case versus actually speaking on her actual behavior after it happened. Friends noticed that I was more closed off and a little bit scared and kind of afraid for people to touch me. That would be stronger here than, oh, I told my friends and I was scared that he was going to threaten me versus, oh, I actually heard Diddy threaten her one time. If it's something against Diddy, then they can't testify against it. But her as the plaintiff saying, I told them this, so it's true. It's not going to be good evidence. She was even afraid to stay in New York City while Combs lived there. So with the help of a friend, she fled to Pennsylvania. Plaintiff has in fact relocated multiple times throughout the years in an effort to stay away from Combs. Plaintiff has suffered irreparable harm because of the brutal R word by defendant Combs and Sherman. She suffers from severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Again, they're going to go all up in her medical records. Excuse me. And also has suffered self-harm ideations and intrusive thoughts and has attempted to end her own life. Plaintiff lives in constant fear. She struggles with hypervigilance and experiences anxiety and panic attacks in social settings, preferring to be alone. Her need to hide to feel safe has strained her relationships with family and friends. Defendant's R-word has also impacted plaintiff's ability to engage in sexual acts with her intimate partners. To this day, she cannot be in certain sexual positions without experiencing flashbacks of Combs violently harming her from behind. Plaintiff learns that the rape was videotaped and published on or around November 27, 2023. All of the trauma of the R-word came flooding back to plaintiff when her former boyfriend revealed to her for the first time that Combs and Sherman had recorded and published the video of the horrific attack. Earlier that month, plaintiff Ventura had come forward and filed a lawsuit against Combs for subjecting her to years of severe sexual and physical abuse. The case had been settled one day after it had been filed. Plaintiff's former boyfriend invoked Ms. Ventura's effort to hold plaintiff or Combs accountable, and for the first time I lost my train of thought. Ms. Ventura's effort to hold Combs accountable and for the first time confessed that years earlier, but sometime after the actual R-word itself, Sherman and Combs had showed him and a group of men, some of whom were employed by Combs companies and or their related entities, the video of plaintiff being R-worded. He disclosed that Combs and Sherman had a pattern and practice of non-consensually recording women engaging in SA and making those videos available to the public, including by selling tapes as adult films. A Bad Boy artist later corroborated in a text message that Sherman used to sell adult films of him doing this to chicks, and Sherman did that to a lot of women. Now, I know she is trying to make the boyfriend anonymous, but they're going to subpoena him. Like, they know who he is. Like, if you're claiming that they did this, they know who he is. If they don't know who he is, they're going to do discovery to get who he is. And if he's still an executive or like a very recent executive, they are going to subpoena him to testify if they are going to court, if they end up going to trial, or they'll even depose him. They might do both, right? And especially saying that this same executive is the one that kind of encouraged Cassie to bring her case forward. They are going to want to talk to him for sure, because she's kind of putting a lot of the information on him. He's the one that's seen the video. He's the one that knew about the video years ago. He's the one can testify to the the fact that a video exists other than plaintiff. She has to have some corroborating evidence. So this executive is going to have to come and testify. I mean, I can't see how Diddy would get around not subpoena him, because she's saying he's the one that knows all of this information. Yeah, so all right, girl, you might as well have named him here. Plaintiff's former boyfriend reported that he and the other men watched the recording of Plaintiff's R-word on a handheld camera while at the Bad Boy studio in New York City. Combs, Sherman, and some of the other men made derogatory comments about the former boyfriend's relationship with Plaintiff in an attempt to shame him into cutting ties with Plaintiff and to cause her further emotional harm and embarrassment. On information and belief, defendants continue to show the video of the R-word to others over the years, and through to the present, and or sold the video as adult films. And I'm wondering if she's seen it at this point, filing this lawsuit, or if she's just going off of the other guy's word. Plaintiff was shocked and horrified that Combs and Sherman had recorded her and publicized the video of them R-wording her. After over 2 decades spent trying to heal and distance herself from the experience, Plaintiff was devastated by the news. She felt as if her life had been turned upside down again, and like the R-word had been happening again and again, even as she was trying to forget it. She experienced acute psychological distress, plunging into a deep depression and having suicidal ideations. She felt intense fear, anger, and anxiety. Plaintiff lives with the distress of knowing that the video of her brutal R-word is in circulation and that anyone, including her family, friends, and peers, could view it at any time. In a panic, she reached out to Sherman after learning about the tape, hoping to protect herself from further humiliation by convincing him to destroy the tape or provide it to her, but he did not respond. Combs' pattern of practice of violence and abuse, including drugging, R-wording, and secretly recording his violence against women. She goes on to say that he has a long history of doing this to people. There was someone that talked about him shooting the club and actually claiming that, and I don't know, I haven't looked too much into this, but that she was actually shot in the face by Diddy. And then she goes on to detail all of the cases that have been filed. We got in November 2023, there was 3 lawsuits filed under the New York Adult Survivors Act. As noted above, Cassie Ventura, an artist signed to Bad Boy, sued Combs in the Southern District of New York for R-word and years-long physical abuse, facilitated in part by Combs having supplied Ms. Ventura with copious amount of drugs and urging her to take them beginning in 2006. Combs regularly recorded Ms. Ventura engaging in sex acts he forced her to engage in. Joy Dickerson Neal, that was the one that I was talking about, was the model that he recorded, who had appeared with Combs in a music video, sued Combs in New York County Supreme Court, alleging Combs drugged, SA'd her, and secretly recorded the assault in 1991. Lisa Gardner, whom Combs met at an event hosted by a record label affiliated with Bad Boy, sued him for R-wording her and her friend in 1990 or 1991 when she was only 16. I don't remember reading this one. Y'all let me know if we covered it on the channel, if you can remember. It's just so many of these lawsuits at this point. I honestly don't remember covering that one. In December 2023, an anonymous plaintiff sued plaintiff in the Southern District of New York for drugging and gang R-wording her in 2003 when she was only 17 years old. The complainant alleges that Combs and one of his business associates and employees lured the plaintiff to Daddy's house through their affiliations with Bad Boy Enterprise and its related entities and R-worded her at the same location where plaintiff was R-worded. I also don't remember covering that one. In February 2024, little Rodney Jones, one of Combs' former producers, sued Combs for forcing him to engage in unwanted sex acts and sex trafficking, among other allegations. In that complaint, Mr. Jones alleges that Combs regularly drugged others, including minors, by giving them alcoholic beverages laced with ecstasy and other date rape drugs, that he believes he himself was drugged by Combs, and that Combs routinely secretly recorded sexual encounters. In May 2024, 2 more women sued Combs. Former model Crystal McKinney sued Combs in the Southern District of New York for drugging and SAing her at his recording studio in 2003. Combs had promised to help advance Miss McKinney's modeling career, a promise she believed he would fulfill because of his ownership of and or titles at Bad Boys Enterprise and its related entities. I don't know if I remember that one either. April Lamprose, an intern at Arista Records, which was an owner of Bad Boy, also sued Combs in May 2024 in New York County Supreme Court for R-wording her on multiple occasions, secretly filming at least one of these assaults and showing the recording to multiple people. Miss Lamprose, I hope I'm saying that right, alleges that Combs ordered her to take drugs on one occasion before he R-worded her. Did we cover that one? I might not just remember people's names because it sounds familiar, but I don't remember. In July 2024, former adult film star Adria English, who was employed by Combs as an entertainer at his infamous white parties that brought together the biggest names in the music and entertainment industry, sued Combs in the Southern District of New York for sex trafficking, and alleging that he required her to consume drinks laced with ecstasy and secretly recorded the SAs or sexual acts he forced her to engage in. In September 2024, singer and songwriter Dawn Angelique Richard also sued Combs. Richard was employed by Combs as part of the girl group Dainty Kane, formed by Combs and later as a key member of Combs' band Diddy Dirty Money. She sued Combs in the Southern District of New York for SA, false imprisonment, and for subjecting her to a hostile work conditions due to her gender, including degrading comments and threat. Miss Richards has alleged that Combs regularly supplied others, including minors, with copious amounts of drugs and alcohol and subjected them to sexual acts while they were sedated and or unconscious due to drugs and alcohol. Then they go on to say that he was arrested for the sex trafficking and racketeering. The indictment details decades of how he coerced women, hurt women, and everything. The indictment notes that Combs' business was operated at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprise, and Combs Global. And according to, they go on to talk about the indictment. And so we're not going to dive into that because we have already covered the indictment in depth. If you missed that video, you or that live stream can go back and check it out because we cover everything, including how the defense tried to get Diddy off on bail, offering nothing at all. So we're not going to jump into that, but they seized narcotics. She brought up the baby oil, the 1,000 bottles of baby oil on the wall and everything. And then she goes into the causes of action, which her causes of action is a violation of New York City Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Act. And then she is also suing under violation of New York civil rights law. And basically is the SA. And then one of them kind of sounded, and I didn't have time, I didn't go and look it up. One of them sounded like revenge porn law, but I don't know if she would be able, if that's what she's suing under. It just sounded like it. I don't know if she would be able to succeed on it because I don't think that, or not that I don't think that law did not exist at the time that this happened, unless they're still distributing it, which she is claiming that they are still distributing it. So I guess if they are still distributing it, then she would be able to qualify under that law. But I'm also like, well, did the record? No, you can't disseminate stuff even if the recording happened a long time ago. So maybe she can win because if she can show that they're still distributing it to other people. But yeah, this was the newest lawsuit by Thalia Graves. I hope I'm saying her name right. That's what it looks like, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and read it as. And so this case is pretty intense. I think it is very similar to the Joy Dickerson Neal case in the fact that they invited her over, they gave her the wine and let her pass out, and kind of, hers was a date. Joy Dickerson Neal's was a Joy Dickerson Neal's was a date. This one, on the other hand, was trying to help the boyfriend. Again, the plot is a little sketchy to me, but she fell for it and he was able to lure her over there. So whether it was a good plan or not, it seemed to have succeeded for Combs to be able to get what he wanted in the situation. So I don't know how far the lawsuit is going to go. I don't know how he's going to even be able to participate in all of these lawsuits with him being in jail. He's going to have a criminal lawyer, a civil lawyer, another civil lawyer, all of these people working on these cases. And I'm like, at this point, or is it a class action? No, it's not a class action because it would have to be like the same events, and there's not enough of the same events happening. They're not all saying they were at this one white party where this happened. So no, we're not looking at class actions, but they might combine the cases in a way for a judicial efficiency if they are in the same courts, just because a lot of them do have similar facts, right? Similar facts. I do think that it's interesting that they bring up everything or all the other cases that have been in play, because it does kind of show a pattern. The thing about that though is we can't say he did it this time, so he must have done it this time too, court. You have to believe me. But it does kind of give the court some indication like, okay, this is a pattern. Although they can't really rely on the pattern, it is a pattern. And he has an MO, although they can't not convict but hold him liable on the MO. It does make the cases stronger. Like this guy is doing that. If he is convicted in that one, or not, sorry, held liable in that case, then he's probably liable in this case, and he's probably liable in this case. But the court has to be very careful not to say, okay, well, everyone's jumping on this bandwagon, so we have to have the sufficient facts. We can't just say because he settled with Cassie and because he did it with Cassie, or because he did it to Cassie with the proof and everything coming out, even though he denied it even after he paid her, and then had to come out and admit that he did some stuff. I don't know if he's going to come off as a very credible person, but the court does have to be very careful in saying, okay, well, he did it to this person, so he also must have done it to this person. So it brings the attention to the case for her listing out all of those cases, but it's not going to be something she'll be able to rely on in the case. Now, I think she was pretty detailed. I think that she has a good chance of showing it, especially if they find the video. She did not indicate that she's seen the video, and she does not indicate that she has found the video. So she's going to have to rely probably on this other executive coming forward and saying, yes, I saw the video. And then the text message she said that someone else sent to her, it doesn't necessarily say that that they saw the video. It might have been a response that I heard he recorded me, and the guy's like, yeah, he does that to a lot of people. That's what the text message seemed like to me. So the only real evidence, unless, like I said, she knows where the video is, or that she's hoping that the feds found the video when they raided Diddy's house, the only thing she's going to be able to rely on is that executive. And was that executive fired at this point? Because she said he also encouraged Cassie to file her lawsuit. So are people going to see him as biased or a disgruntled employee and saying, yeah, this video existed back then, but I'm just now coming forward and stepping up? So I really hope there's not a video, but if there is a video, I do hope that she finds it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the chat, y'all. And I know I was kind of rambling for quite a while. And for those of you that are just coming in that missed the beginning of the stream, the like goal for the stream is 50 likes. We are currently at 19 likes with 16 people watching live. So if you haven't already, please do hit the like button. It does help us out in the algorithm, and we need more friends over here at the BriHive. So make sure you hit the like button so we can hit the like goal. And again, we haven't seen Bossy B give us our like goal in a while, so we would like to see that today. So let's have Bossy B bring us in. All right, shout out to Kimmy for starring the relevant chats to me, or for me, so that we can make sure that we are covering the things that are related to the live stream, while also allowing y'all to have y'all little chats in the chat without being put on blast. Okay. Let me go ahead. Let me see. Okay. So we got Deacon Fatal, welcome in, member and moderator of the channel, saying, well, I think I forgot to do something. Well, the different S. Combs is going through detox, I'm sure. Oh, yeah. They're saying that he's having problems with detoxing from whatever drug he's on. And apparently, like, it's this mixed drug that almost makes him like zombie state. And that, like, honestly does not surprise me, because, like, when I see Diddy, he just always looks like no personality, in my opinion. But yeah, you know. Deacon Fatal says that pink mess they found is no joke. Yep, that's what I forgot what it's called. Deacon Fatal says one of Cassie's friends has also spoken out with a reporter within this week. I have not seen that. Another thing that is speculated, not proven, those weren't baby bottles. You mean the baby oil bottles? What do you think they were? You think they were more drugs? It wasn't baby oil. Deacon Fatal says it's a drug called Toonie, I think, and they have it in baby oil bottles. Dang, that changes the whole context of the actual live stream that we had the other day. Deacon Fatal says, has X and meth and cocoa and caffeine in Special K. That's what's mixed into that pink powder stuff. Nissa Howard says, this case makes me mad because Diddy did this because he had money and power. Yeah, and I'm like, to me, I'll be like, that don't make no sense. But I can definitely see why she's like, well, I need to help my boyfriend get a better, a leg up in the industry. But my other question is like, what did she think she could do to help her boyfriend's career that he couldn't talk to her about it with the boyfriend there? I can't blame her for falling for it because he is, famous and in charge of a company that your boyfriend is working for. But I'll be like, well, I'll just bring my boyfriend and you can talk to both of us. Like, I don't know. I think it was a stupid plot that he came up with. But like I said, she wants her boyfriend to succeed. Just Me MD says, my God, I don't think I can make it through this one. Y'all, I'm going to be sick. Yeah, it was bad. It was definitely bad. Like y'all see, I didn't have no jokes. No jokes throughout the reading of that because it's too serious. There's nothing we can laugh at. There's no baby oil bottles we can laugh at here. It's too serious. It's affecting someone's life, right? And my thing is that I'm afraid because she put her psyche on the line, and that's going to have to be looked into. Deacon Fatal says he recorded everything. Yeah, he's weird. Tiara says, Cal reminder. I don't know if I know what that means. Just Me MD says, I agree with Bree, was never a Puffy fan. Yeah, he didn't really have the jams for me, and like I said, maybe I was of the age that, that was not my music vibe. But even now, like I said, I didn't even know that was a thing, the Diddy Dirty Money thing. I really didn't know that was a thing. Oh, I meant to touch on this at the beginning of the live stream. So I'll probably just send a message to Tanya on Discord about the Miley Cyrus case. It wasn't that interesting. It's not actually Bruno Mars suing him. It's some other people that acquired the rights through a different writer. It's not Bruno Mars suing it. It's the Bruno Mars song, but there were other writers on the song and other people with rights to the song. And so none of the other people that actually are writers on the song sued Miley Cyrus. It's this Johnny Come Lately person who bought the rights from one of the writers on the song. So I don't know how far it's going to go. I do think that the songs are very similar, but I also think they're trying to get their money because that song is so old. It's probably not really producing money like they wanted to. So they're going to try to get it out of Miley Cyrus. So that just reminded me of that case. So I do need to send a message to Tanya D regarding that. We got Deacon Fatal says, and if he is this crazy, you think the state will not let him fumble? He is the dumbest man that... Oops. I haven't used my little censor thingy in a long time. So I don't know how you wanted me to say that, but behind two hells, this case is a hot mess. He is a hot mess. He puts people through things they don't need to go through for sure. Rachel Mills says, this is one of the grossest lawsuits of the bunch. I don't know if we can even say that because they all have been pretty bad. Like, I don't think I found one that I'm like, that's not that bad. Like, all of them are bad. All of them are really bad. Deacon Fatal says, okay, I thought that mess was a rumor that he was going to release videos every week while he was in court. What? That's what he said? Just Me MD says published. What was I talking about? Published what? The videos, you mean? Were the videos published? She's saying that they were distributed. I don't know if I'm answering your question right. Deacon Fatal says, and who in their right mind would buy that mess? Which one? I don't know if we're talking about this. I don't know what I was talking about earlier. Y'all got to give me more context. Kimmy Lockett says to Deacon Fatal, I mean, these cases show that there's some sick people in the world and sick people buy sick things. Oh, the video. Like, who would buy the video of him harming her? Yeah, no, that makes sense. That is weird, and it's a weird fetish, but it sounds like some people actually have that fetish. Like, some people really do actually have that fetish. So it's not surprising that they were able to sell it. And obviously, if they're claiming that the security guard did this often, he had an audience for that type of content. The sad as it is, there is an audience for that content, and he knew who his audience was, and he was able to get them content of real non-consenting victims. So There's that. Deacon Fiddle says, put them all on the stand. And they will have to. Just Me MD says, that's what I was wondering. Can they put those that he shared the video with, can they be called to testify? Yes. If they cannot find the video, someone who was there when the video was shown can come and testify and say, yes, I was there. There is a video of her doing this thing. They can't necessarily, they would be able to testify because if the video has been destroyed, they would be the next best evidence. That's not hearsay. They're just saying, hey, yes, I saw the video. It was her. It was Diddy. It was Sherman. They were all in there. You could tell that she was passed out. In my opinion, as a lay person watching the video, she was passed out. And if Diddy was like, yeah, I drugged her, then he can testify. Yeah. And Diddy was all like, I drugged her. Yeah, I did it. Or even Sherman, because he's also a defendant in the case. If they heard him like making comments about it and then also observe the video, they can call those people to come in and testify. Kimmy Locker says to Just Me MD, they can definitely be called to testify, but how honest will they be, especially if they're somehow implicated? That is the other thing. That's on like if for the music executive that she's saying was her boyfriend, was he fired? Because when he comes to testify, the defense is going to paint him as a disgruntled employee that didn't get what he wanted. So now he's helping this girl file a lawsuit. Now it's going to be up to the jury to decide who they believe or not, of course, but the defense is going to try to tear that testimony down. Same thing like Kimmy said. And then if there was also other people that was there, while the other guy that was there, they go, no, that was not what the video was about. We was watching a music video. And they're on Diddy's side, those kind of things can play a role in it too. And then it's up to the jury to decide who they believe. I think what a lot of these people are doing and with getting the jury trial, it's going to be very hard to get an untainted jury pool. A lot of people are hearing about this case. So even if you didn't really know P. Diddy before, you probably have heard of him and heard of some of his cases going on. He's a celebrity being investigated by Homeland Security, and now he's been indicted for federal crimes. So even if you didn't listen to Diddy, you didn't really know about him, you never really heard about him, you probably heard about this case. And not saying everybody will, but a lot of people will. And these cases are in New York. So a lot of people in New York, that's the jury pool we're pulling from. A lot of people in New York are going to hear about this case. So it's going to be hard. And so even if Diddy has someone on their side saying, oh, no, that's not what happened, so many people have already heard the facts and heard all the other cases. It's going to be hard not to pull in everybody's others lawsuits into this one and say, oh, no, he's innocent on this one. This one, she's just trying to get money, right? So it'll be an interesting trial for sure. Rachel Mills says, I wonder if she can file criminal charges against them now for revenge porn law. So she cannot bring the charges against her. She can ask for the DA to bring charges, but she cannot. Like, she can't bring the charges, right? It has to be the prosecutor that says, yes, you have enough evidence. We're going to go ahead and bring this. And again, without the actual video, she does not have, in my opinion, she does not have enough evidence for the conviction of the revenge porn. Now she's saying that it's still being disseminated thing, yes, but he can't be liable for disseminating it back in 2007 when the law did not I don't know if the law existed then, but whatever the statute of limitations is, and I don't think the law existed back in 2007 because I think revenge porn really started coming about in the 2010s, not like 2007. So and I could be wrong, and maybe the law has existed since then, but I don't think so. So he would still have to be disseminating it now in order for him to be held criminally liable for it. Island says most of these things are past the statute of limitations. Yes. And so they have that, what is it, the Adult Survivors Act that New York extended for another year. So they're still within that limitations to bring this case. So yes, it is really old, but they made a law. It's in California. There's one in New York. I want to say there's one in Florida that covers kind of the same thing. As if you survived this way back when, but you never brought the case, it's a part of like the Me Too movement, giving people the opportunity to get their justice when they were too afraid to say it back then, and now they're saying it now. Island says that's why they're filing lawsuits to go under the that statute that extended for them. Just Me MD says sharing these videos without their permission can be a different charge added to his case, right? Yeah, so if he's still disseminating them, he can get revenge porn criminal case filed against him or potentially added to the indictment, right? Because they're alleging that he's recording these people. They took plenty of video files from his house when they did the raid. So that probably is coming out. The other thing about it is the recording would be illegal, right? It's your house, you can record, but you're recording that kind of stuff. And this is not just normal safety, security, what you have going on. You are recording this on purpose, right? Because I'm sure you didn't save the regular days that nothing was happening. You're saving these sex parties, though. You're not saving when you were making breakfast at 10 a.m. in 2010, right? But you're saving the sex party you had in 2010. So those are different crimes. The thing about having it on his hard drive or save does not necessarily mean that he's disseminating it. So there's different charges, that can be brought, like the filming without consent, the filming sexual acts without consent. And then again, it also depends on when the filming happened, when the statute came into place, and everything else that comes with it. Because when you're in your house, that's a private area that you're allowed to film. But that does not extend to filming people sexually without their knowledge and without their consent. Okay. But you can film people just in your house, just normally without their consent. I hope that makes sense. Kimmy Locker says to Just Me MD, I think it could be added to his criminal case, but the government would have to have the evidence proving he did it beyond a reasonable doubt. Exactly. And so that's why I'm saying they wouldn't need the tape, because you're saying, okay, there's a tape and he's disseminating it. And in this lawsuit, she's saying he's still disseminating it. Okay, well, what website are we finding this on? Where are we finding this video from 2000 that's still being disseminated? Are people really still buying that? Are people really still watching that, right? Deacon Vadel says, yes, it did sound like it, and I think they are still selling it on the dark web thingy. Deacon Vadel says, now what is going to mess him up is the male sex workers. You think so? Do you think so? Deacon Vadel says, and the fact that no one that is drunk can consent. Exactly. That's another point to bring up. I didn't even mention that when you're talking about filming people without their consenting. You're drugging everybody, involuntary intoxication. If they're involuntarily intoxicated, they cannot give consent. And sometimes when you're voluntarily intoxicated, you can't give consent. So in these situations where they're involuntary intoxicated, and you can't say, oh, well, they drank the wine, so they were voluntarily getting intoxicated. Well, they didn't know you slipped a drug into the wine. They thought they were coming, having 2 glasses of wine, still under the legal limit, and all of a sudden they're passing out. That's not consent. That's not voluntarily intoxicated. Just Me MD says, wait, can these also fall under hate crime law? I don't know how that was. They're already suing under the violence against women, violence based on gender. I don't know if it will fall under hate crime, though. Rachel Mill says prior bad acts cannot come to the jury, right? Exactly, unless he opens the door for it or unless there's some other kind of exception for it. Deacon Fatal says to me, I'm too poor to worry about this rich abuser problems. Min Reyes and Actress Reyes are shown to me, and now it's up to the jury. Yep, exactly. It'll be up to the jury and how the case is presented. Absolutely right. Mr. Howard says Diddy needs to be punished, and they are working on it. That little $30 million didn't hurt his pockets enough, so they're going to hurt him and put him in jail. That boy really wanted to get out. He really thought he was going to get out. And I can't believe with them saying, oh, for his medical issues. I'm wondering if they were talking about his medical issues being him withdrawing from them drugs. Sir. No, that is not medical issues. I mean, I guess technically it is, but you did that to yourself. Because remember, last year I was like, I wonder if he has something like medically wrong with him, like maybe he has cancer or something like that. No, if it's him trying to withdraw from drugs, you have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. You can't get no more house IVs, sir. Sorry about it. Deacon Fatal says he trapped Cassie with like 6-year album deal to trap her. He trapped her with a 10 album deal. No timeline. She had to produce 10 albums and she only dropped one. She only dropped one album. Okay. Kimmy Lockett says, yeah, it was a 10 album deal. Yep. Rachel Mills says the throwing up in the mouth and other problem down there was something I've rarely seen. She said that she threw up in her own mouth. I thought that was worded kind of funny because she said she threw up in her mouth and then onto the table. But it's just like you threw up, and to me it sounds like she threw up. She tried to hold it in her mouth, but then it started to spill out. The backdoor stuff, disturbing that he would keep going with that. Yeah. Deacon Fatal says, well, does any of this matter with the criminal case by the DOJ or with the civil cases? They can use it. Like I said, they use in my opinion, they use Cassie's case to bring the original criminal trial. And they said that they are going to probably be adding the superseding indictments. Do I know how those work? No, because I don't practice criminal law. So you are gonna have to go talk to Natalie Lawyer Chick to see how all of that stuff happens. And she actually covered this case I think yesterday or the day before, whenever it came out, she covered it. So for the criminal rules of procedure, you're gonna have to talk to Natalie Lawyer Chick. Let me see here. Deacon Fiddle says, because I'm looking at the federal cases for trafficking. Detox is a mess. Yeah, his detox is a mess. Kimmy Locker says, I hope detox was miserable. I think it's still going on. I think it's still going on, and it should still be going on. Might even offer him a little bit more so he can do it again. Just Me MD says, yes, Bree, that's what I mean. Violence Against Women Act. I thought there was a hate crime enhancement added to it. I don't know that off the top of my head, to tell you the truth, and I'm not gonna pretend like I do. But I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if it comes up, right? All right, y'all. So let me see. What was I saying? Okay. Anyways, thank y'all for all the comments on the chat. We got another one like DJ Khaled said, another one with Dawn Richard from Dainty Kane. And now, luckily hers, and I can't even say luckily, let me go ahead and have Bossy B bring us in. Y'all, we are at 22 likes. 18 people watching live. So if you haven't hit the like button, please do. Our like goal for the stream is 50 likes, and we're pretty far away. We got about an hour left. So hopefully we can reach it, right? Hopefully we can reach it. What I was saying before I hit our Bossy B button, I keep forgetting if I hit my bookmark or not, but it might be a lot of bookmarks in the back channel. With Dawn Richards' case, I was going to say, luckily she was not like brutally SA'd in the way that a lot of the other women were. She was still, in my opinion, SA'd, touched without her consent, but it wasn't like the Thalia where it's detailed of her like doing this and him still kind of forcing himself on her. He touched her without consent. From what I can remember, I might have forgotten some things because I did read these both like back to back, but my recollection is that he touched her without consent, like still an assault, but not to the level of Thalia's. And then his was more of the demeaning and just kind of being brutal, hostile work conditions to her. So this one is still hard to get through, but hopefully it's not as hard to get through as the Thalia case. And so if you guys don't know who Dawn Richard is, she was a part of the Dainty Kane music group that was formed on Making the Band. I actually watched that season of Making the Band, but I didn't really continue to watch it. Like they were like a season in 2009 and like the fifth season. I'm like, I did not know that show went that far. I thought it was just that season and that was it. And even they said Dawn was on season 3. And I was like, oh, I thought that was like the only season, but apparently it wasn't. Apparently they had several seasons regarding that show. And actually Dawn was supposed to be a judge on the show in like 2020. So the case, I mean, that the show was still going on. I didn't know that, but apparently it did. I'm debating on if I want to read the introduction or just jump right into the factual allegations because it is kind of repetitive. They just kind of word things differently. So yeah, I think I'm going to skip the introduction and jump right into the actual factual allegations just so that I am not getting too tired reading stuff. We're not getting too tired reading stuff. So let me go ahead and show the case. We got Don Angelique Richards suing Sean Combs, Harvey Pierre, Remote Productions, all of these other companies mixed in between. She is also asking for a jury trial demand, and she is also in the Southern District of New York. So we got two cases filed within the same month, within the same district, along with some other cases that are already filed there. And I'm just wondering, are they assigning all of these cases to the same judge, or are they kind of trying to spread this out amongst the judges within this department? Because these are a lot of cases, and most, if not all, if I can remember, are being filed in New York, some at different levels or different areas of New York, but they are all being filed in New York, if I remember correctly. Let me go ahead and I will actually say, let me tell you all this. I'm kind of, name dropping. I actually worked with her trademark attorney that is listed on this document. She was actually my trademark teacher in law school. So I'm pretty, I know one of Don Richard's lawyers. I don't know if that makes me cool or not, but I do. So I worked on some of her trademarks for her, actually, and she doesn't even know I exist. So there's that. Okay, let's go ahead and drop down to the allegations in the complaint. And she's suing for a lot of things. Like, she got like 20 pages of causes of action. Like, it's the kitchen sink being thrown at these people for the allegations. I'm sorry, for the causes of action in this lawsuit. So we have Miss Richards is selected to be in Combs' all-female musical group, Dainty Kane, after competing on MTV's and Making the Band. So in or around 2004, Miss Richards was selected to participate in season 3 of MTV Network's reality television show, Making the Band. The show centered around the formation and development of a new musical group under the mentorship of Mr. Combs. The contestants would compete to be chosen by Mr. Combs to form a band, which would go on to create albums and perform. For aspiring artists like Miss Richards, Making the Band represented a concrete path to a career in the entertainment industry. Miss Richards appeared in season 3 and season 4 of Making the Band, which first aired in 2005, and in season 5 of Making the Band, which aired in 2009. Out of thousands of contestants, Miss Richard, along with approximately 12 other women, were selected to participate in season 3 of Making the Band. 5 women, including Miss Richard, was ultimately chosen to be in the group Dainty Kane, which was named by Miss Richards. Miss Richard, I don't know why I want to put an S on the end. Prior to and including the first Dainty Kane album, Miss Making the Band was filmed entirely at Daddy's House Recording Studio. The Making the Band content that focused on Dainty Kane the Making the Band content that focused on Dainty Kane's work on its second album. Welcome to the Dollhouse was filmed at Daddy's House and Mr. Combs' Miami residence. Other Making the Band episodes included Los Angeles as a third filming location. Upon information and belief to create Making the Band, camera crews filmed 24 hours a day, gathering months worth of footage to condense into mere hours of entertainment for viewers. That is a lot of recording. Dainty Kane released its self-titled debut album in August 2006 and its second album, Welcome to the Dollhouse, in March 2008. Y'all, I really thought I was like a Dainty Kane fan, and then they start naming all the songs that they have. I was like, I probably knew like 3 songs. Like 3 songs from Dainty Kane. Sorry about it. But yeah, I thought I was a fan, but apparently I was not. I was not a fan. Dainty Kane's first album sold over 4 million copies. Damages to Miss Richards for unpaid salaries are estimated to be $1 million. Dainty Kane's second album, Welcome to the Dollhouse, sold over 2 million copies. Damages to Miss Richards for unpaid salary and royalties are estimated to be $500,000. Damages on unpaid wages for touring on over 100 days for Miss Richard with Dainty Kane are estimated to be $1.8 million. So we are already looking at almost $3 million. Over $3 million that she's saying he owes to her. And I'm like, did they not pay you at all? Like, the way this is written, it sounds like he didn't pay her at all, like at all. Mr. Combs fired bandmate Aubrey O'Day and Juanita D. Woods from Dainty Kane on live television at the height of its fame in 2008, which resulted in Dainty Kane being disbanded in 2009. Miss Richards' first encounter with Mr. Combs' aggressive, intimidating behavior and animus towards women. During the auditions and on the set of Making the Band, Mr. Combs projected an aura of superiority, wealth, and power. Mr. Combs regularly wore sunglasses to avoided looking the female contestants in the eye, contributing to an atmosphere of uncertainty and intimidation. I hate when people do that. Like, you're not cool. Take those glasses off and like treat people like humans. Okay? I hate when people do that. Oh, I got all my sunglasses off. Who are you? I could just imagine his dumb little face looking at them. Like, who are you? Oh yeah, whatever. I don't care. Maybe that's not what happened, but still, I can imagine it, okay? During auditions, Mr. Combs spoke to the female contestants in a hostile, condescending manner, making disparaging gender-based remarks such as calling them fat, ugly, and hoes. Is hoes a cuss word? I'm gonna call it a cuss word. Hoes. You're not doing a good job at beeping it out, Bree. Miss Richards felt threatened and intimidated by Mr. Combs' blatant disdain for young women like herself who were excited for an opportunity to be on his show. Once the ban was made, Mr. Combs' contempt for women was readily apparent as he continued to display aggressive and hostile behavior towards Miss Richard and her all-female Dainty Kane bandmates. Mr. Combs regularly referred to the women as and denigrated their physical appearance. By way of example, Mr. Combs stated that Miss Richard was too skinny and needed to do something about this face. Yeah, he would have got slapped. It's easy to say somebody would have got slapped when you're not the one in the situation, but yeah, do something about your face, okay? And why your mouth is always open. Close your mouth, sir, okay? On one occasion in or around 2005, during the first season of Making the Band 3, Miss Richard observed Mr. Combs' ex-partner and the mother of his 3 children, Kim Porter, leaving Mr. Combs' recording studio in tears with visible facial injuries, including a lacerated lip. Realizing that Mr. Combs was capable of committing acts of violence against women caused Miss Richards to feel deep apprehension and fear that Mr. Combs could one day physically harm her. That definitely makes sense. If you see him beating up the woman that he loves, you definitely should think that he will beat you up too. Miss Richard was present when Mr. Combs was introduced to Cassandra, known as Cassie Ventura, for the first time in or around 2006. The moment Mr. Combs first saw Miss Ventura, his demeanor noticeably shifted. Mr. Combs positioned himself directly in front of Miss Ventura's seat, invading her personal space and fixated on her with an intense, unyielding stare, isolating her from the other people in the room, including Miss Ventura's then boyfriend, music producer Ryan Leslie. Now, if I recall correctly, Cassie was like 19. Diddy was weird. Like, why are you going after her? But I guess it was an age gap, but I guess it wasn't that bad. Like, I just imagine Diddy being 50 all the time, but I guess he's like 50 something right now, right? How old is Diddy? He's 54. So I guess he would have been what? 20 years ago? Almost 20 years ago, he would have been 34. Yeah, no, that's still a pretty big age gap. Never mind. I was thinking maybe he was in his 20s, but no, he was in his 30s already. Weirdo still. Coincidentally, the first meeting between Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura was the first time that Miss Richard was in Mr. Combs' presence without a camera crew filming. Observing Mr. Combs behave in such an intimidating, predatory manner, the first time they were off camera made Miss Richard feel deeply apprehensive and afraid of him. Subsequently, Miss Ventura ended her relationship with Mr. Leslie and began dating Mr. Combs, who would become violent and abusive towards Cassie. Dainty Kane, sexual harassment, inhumane treatment, and denial of basic needs by Mr. Combs. For the majority of Miss Richards' tenure as a member of Dainty Kane and Diddy Dirty Money, Mr. Combs required her to remain at his various residences and studios in New York, Los Angeles, Florida, and New Jersey for activities such as recording, rehearsing, dressing, preparing costumes, and exercising. Throughout the production of making the band 3 and 4, Mr. Combs deprived Miss Richard and her Dainty Kane bandmates of basic needs such as adequate food and sleep. This part is ridiculous. When Miss Richards or her Dainty Kane bandmate requested meals or rest, Mr. Combs refused and chastised them with derogatory comments like, "You don't want this and y'all are not hungry enough. I'm paying you to work." This demeaning behavior gradually undermined Ms. Richards' confidence and contributed significantly to her growing feelings of insecurity and fear of reprisal from Mr. Combs. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs would regularly be awake for prolonged periods of time because he was high on drugs. This man sounds like he's never sober. And apparently he wants everybody else to feel like him because he's always trying to drug people without them knowing. Some people don't need to be high all the time, Diddy. Some people just don't need that. But apparently, according to all of these lawsuits and allegations, it sounds like you needed to be high or drunk or something all the time. During these periods, Mr. Combs demanded continuous access to Miss Richard and her Dainty Kane bandmates, often forcing them to record and rehearse for stretches of 36 to 48 hours without breaks. That's ridiculous. Forced to choose between eating and sleeping, Miss Richard lost a significant amount of weight, weighing approximately 100 pounds at a height of 5'4". Miss Richard began to normalize these extreme conditions and perceive them as a standard requirement of her participation in Dainty Kane. Mr. Combs regularly sent his associates to wake Miss Richard and her Dainty Kane bandmates in the overnight hours so he could watch them rehearse. The regularity of these disturbances led Miss Richard to adapt by sleeping in a sitting position, fully dressed and with makeup on, heightened her anxiety. Over time, the abnormal sleeping arrangement came to feel routine, further normalizing Mr. Combs' invasive demands. The crazy part about this lawsuit to me, y'all, is she continued to work with him for years. Like, I definitely understand wanting your career to take off, but all of this, I don't know. I don't know if I could be that dedicated to a career. I don't know if I could. Okay, let's jump back into it. In addition to exhausting rehearsal, Mr. Combs required Miss Richards and her bandmates to participate in intense workouts with a personal trainer. On one occasion, while running on the beach, Miss Richards became so dehydrated that she vomited. Instead of offering medical assistance, MTV Network's camera filmed the incident, contributing to her acceptance of such treatment as part of her professional life. And I mean, I guess if everybody else is making it seem like it's normal, then you think it starts being normal, but I don't know. I don't think I'm that dedicated of a person, to tell you the truth. Apparently that's why I'm not a star, right? The unrelenting and rigorous schedule of rehearsal, performance, and near constant filming that Mr. Combs imposed caused Miss Richard to experience extreme weight loss, dehydration, fatigue, and painful rashes from the microphone pack that she was required to wear on her back. These conditions intensified Miss Richards' feelings of powerlessness as she increasingly viewed them as part of her professional reality and feared the consequence of any resistance. In a further assertion of power and dominance, Mr. Combs insisted on holding meetings while dressed only in his underwear. Why do you think people want to see that, Diddy? Okay. On one occasion in 2008 at his Miami residence, Mr. Combs emailed Miss Richard, directing her to meet him in the living room. That's weird. When she arrived, he was wearing only his underwear. Miss Richards asked Mr. Combs to put clothes on, but he refused, stating, "This is my effing house." Mr. Combs then conducted a meeting lasting approximately an hour while dressed only in his underwear, causing Miss Richard to feel violated and embarrassed and amplifying her feelings of powerlessness. This dude just like literally does whatever he wants, and it is working for him because he's still able to do it. Following the official Dainty Kane breakup in 2009, effectuated Mr. Combs, Following the official Dainty Kane breakup in early 2009, effectuated by Mr. Combs, Miss Richard experienced significant financial hardship. With no prospective opportunities for employment within the entertainment field, Miss Richard spent several months traveling from Baltimore to Daddy's house, recorded studio in New York without pay or allocated budget. Mr. Combs promised that Miss Richards' compositions would result in payment of license fees and royalties pursuant to her contract with Bad Boy Records. However, However, no such compensation was ever reported or paid to Miss Richard. Damages relative to these continuing copyright infringements will be proved at trial. So not only did he not pay her for the work that she did on Dainty Kane, according to this lawsuit, she also was not paid for credits that she helped write, for songs that she helped write. So that's going to be even more money that she is asking for. Diddy Dirty Money, Miss Richards' experiences with Mr. Combs' gender-based physical violence, criminal acts, SA, threats, and intimidation. By approximately the fall of 2009, many of Miss Richards' compositions had been recorded by other bad boy artists. So she's writing songs and he's giving them to other people. Due to the success of her compositions, Miss Richard was invited to meet with musical artist Kalina Harper. And shortly thereafter, Mr. Combs, Miss Richard, and Miss Harper formed a new group, Diddy Dirty Money. I have no idea who Miss Harper is. So y'all let me know if y'all know who that is. Initial recordings for Diddy Dirty Money album Last Train to Paris took place in Mr. Combs' home on the Doheny Drive in Los Angeles, California. On the first day of recording, Miss Richards and Miss Harper arrived at Mr. Combs' home and waited in the kitchen where Mr. Combs' girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, was frying eggs. Miss Richard observed Mr. Combs come down the stairs looking high on drugs, like when is he not? Entered the kitchen, approached Miss Ventura and screamed, "I've been asking you for my... I can't stand you. You never do it right." Mr. Combs pushed Miss Ventura against the wall and choked her, then picked her up the scalding hot pan of eggs and threw it at her, causing her to fall to the ground in a fetal position. Cursing and screaming, Mr. Combs dragged Miss Ventura up the stairs. Frozen in shock and terror, Miss Richard heard glass shattering, crashing, and banging noises as Mr. Combs dragged Miss Ventura up the stairs. Miss Richard wanted to intervene and help Miss Ventura, but Miss Harper adamantly refused to interfere in Mr. Combs' relationship and physically led Miss Richard out of the residence. Terrified and shaken, Miss Richard returned to her hotel. Excuse me. I lost my breath. That was weird. Returned to her hotel where she was unable to sleep due to worrying about Miss Ventura and her own safety. The following day, Miss Richard received a call demanding that she return to Mr. Combs' residence and to continue recording. Mr. Combs brought Miss Richards and Miss Harper into the recording room at his studio, locked the door, dimmed the lights, and gave each of them flowers. Okay. Mr. Combs went on at length, stating, "This is normal. This is normal. This was just a lover's argument where no one was hurt. This is love. Or this is what love is. I'm giving you an opportunity. If you want to make it, you'll shut your mouth. If you say anything, there will be consequences." Mr. Combs further warned that people end up missing. Being threatened while locked for over 20 minutes in a small enclosed space with Mr. Combs after observing Mr. Combs violently assault Miss Ventura the day before, Miss Richard was terrified and genuinely believed that Mr. Combs would follow through on his threats. He's weird. He is a weird guy. In or around November 2009, after the Soul Train Awards in Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Combs flew Miss Richard and Miss Harper to his house in New York on his private jet for an after party. There were many well-known celebrities at the after party who... Tell us who the well-known celebrities are. And copious amounts of illegal drugs were being openly consumed. So if they're being openly consumed, at least it doesn't sound like he's drugging people this time. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs had arranged for dozens of young women and girls, some of whom appeared to be underage, to be transported to the party. The women arrived wearing little to no clothing and were given drugs and alcohol, many of them appearing lethargic or passed out while Mr. Combs and his guests performed sexual acts on them. Miss Richard believed that her presence at the party was a test to see whether Mr. Combs can trust her. Don't let him trust you. Don't let him trust you. That's what I'm learning from a lot of these lawsuits is don't let him trust you. It sounds like they bring a lot of people into the industry that they know are not going to talk, that are not going to speak up. And I think I talked about this on this channel before, of people basically saying, which I think is accurate, they know who they're going to pick out, and that's why we keep getting these artists that are not really to me focused on the craft, but more of making the trendy songs, the catchy songs, the people that are not going to say anything when they see something wrong, because either they think it's normal or they think it's a part of the industry, or they just don't care enough and they want to still be at the height of the celebrity status, because these people do weird things. They do weird things, and they need people who need the money, who are not going to tell, and that they want to be the ones that they can trust. Not necessarily directing this at Don Richard, but like, I'm thinking, not to be, I like Sexy Red, but I think she would be a person that wouldn't say nothing. That's my opinion about it. You know, there's certain artists that it's like, okay, you come from this kind of area, and maybe she would, right? I could just be passing judgment, right? Maybe she would, but a lot of the people that are doing this, a lot of the people that are becoming famous, a lot of the people that they are promoting are more of the people that are not going to say anything. And that's just my opinion. That's my opinion. Okay. I don't know what y'all think about that, but yeah. Mr. Combs repeatedly said things like, "This is a buffet. Enjoy yourself. This is what we do. This is how we party." Miss Richard felt shocked and horrified at the sight of Mr. Combs and his guests violating incapacitated young women, and implored Mr. Combs' personal assistant, Capricorn Clark, to allow her to leave. Miss Clark insisted that Miss Richard wait 15 minutes to Miss Clark to make it make sense. That is, to make Miss Richards' exit less conspicuous so that Mr. Combs would not notice that she had left. Knowing that she was not free to leave and had to wait for Miss Clark to help her orchestrate her departure, Miss Richard experienced feeling of panic and being trapped against her will. Mr. Combs regularly placed Miss Richard in similar situations with no means to escape. At Mr. Combs' drug-filled parties, his guests, including Miss Richard, were required to surrender their phones upon entry. Mr. Combs kept the doors locked and guarded by security personnel, making it impossible for Miss Richard to leave without alerting Mr. Combs that she had done so. Mr. Combs hired police officers to attend his party, sending a clear message to guests that his influence extended to law enforcement officers, and creating a climate of fear and a tactic, warning that reporting him to authorities would be both unacceptable and futile. I don't know if I all the way agree with the whole police thing. I think that was in the Rodney Jones lawsuit. And just reading it that time, I've read it multiple times, but just reading it that time is like, I don't know if that was the reason for inviting the police. I know, like, when you are planning on doing a party, you actually have to have security or police there when you're serving alcohol. So maybe he was like following the rules. Probably not. He probably wasn't following the rules, but I just think of stuff like that because I have tried to like organize parties. And if you're going to have alcohol there, you do have to have a security or an officer there. So highly doubt Diddy was actually thinking that's that legally, right? Not thinking that legally while providing people with illegal drugs, right? But that just crossed my mind. Like, well, you do actually need officers there if you're going to be partying like that. On many occasions, Mr. Combs had parties in his Miami, Florida residence that lasted for several days. At one of the parties, Miss Richard witnessed Mr. Combs openly stating that he had arranged for a busload of young exotic girls, such as mixed Black and Asian, Indonesian, and albino. Once again, Miss Richards observed inebriated young girls being SA'd by Mr. Combs and his guests. In a state of panic and terror, Miss Richard fled to the bedroom Mr. Combs had insisted she stay in, and barricaded the door shut with furniture. Mr. Combs openly assaulted Miss Ventura in front of Miss Richard and other witnesses on multiple occasions. On one occasion, in or around fall of 2009, Diddy Dirty Money was in New York preparing to perform at a festival. Inside their vehicle, Mr. Combs grabbed Miss Ventura's neck, pulled her out of the van onto the grass, and pinned her head down, choking her while yelling, "You're gonna get effed up one day." This incident took place in the backstage area just outside the festival and was entirely visible by passerbys. And my thing is, like, Cassie already settled her lawsuit, but Dawn is making her lawsuit even stronger. Like, she probably would have been a witness to call and testify because she observed all of these things. And part of me is like, why are you bringing all of this up? It's because she is establishing the fear that she felt. She's watching him do this to the person he claims to love. This is love, is what he said. We just had a lover's quarrel. Yeah, you don't grab and snatch up your partner in that way if you love them. So I can definitely see why she's bringing it up. Excuse me, bringing it up. But I'm just like, or are they gonna call her to testify at the criminal trial too, to talk about the stuff that she witnessed? And also, of course, she's gonna testify at her own trial. So it's interesting. Cassie would have had a good case. I'm telling you, she probably would have got more than that 30 million. In another instance, in or around early 2010, Mr. Combs punched Miss Ventura in the face in the bathroom of a party in Los Angeles. What? Frequently, when Miss Ventura attempted to voice her opinion or stand up to Mr. Combs, he would strike her or wrap his hands around her throat and choke her. On the first several occasions that they observed Mr. Combs assault Miss Ventura, Miss Richard and Miss Harper spoke with Miss Ventura to support and encourage Miss Ventura in escaping her abusive relationship with Mr. Combs. Every time Miss Richard and Miss Harper tried to intervene, Mr. Combs learned of the conversation and became irate. Mr. Combs screamed at the women, "Y'all don't get in my relationship. Don't tell my what she need to be doing. Just make money and shut the up. I end artists. I shelve careers. You could be missing and you want to die today." Wow. Among other threats. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Interscope Records enabled Mr. Combs' gender-motivated violence. In or around 2009 or early 2010, Bad Boys Entertainment entered into an agreement with Interscope Griffin A&M Records. Upon information and belief, Bad Boy was paid $50 million in exchange for Bad Boy's future releases being distributed through Interscope. In so doing, Mr. Combs intended to capitalize on Interscope's significant resources and enhance the promotion and sales of Bad Boy's releases, including Diddy Dirty Money's upcoming album. In the weeks and months leading up to Bad Boy Interscope deal, Mr. Combs had frequent meetings with producers and then CEO of Interscope Records, Jimmy Iovine. I think that's how you say that. On one other occasion, Combs hosted a dinner at a West Hollywood, California restaurant, which Miss Richard and Miss Harper were required to attend. Among the guests at the dinner were celebrities like Neo and Usher, as well as Mr. Iovine. At the dinner, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura had an argument. In front of the dinner guests, Mr. Combs hissed at Miss Ventura in a screaming whisper and forcefully punched her in the stomach, causing her to double over in visible pain, crying. Miss Clark escorted Miss Ventura out of the restaurant, and Mr. Combs remained and continued socializing with dinner guests. Oh my God. At this point, Interscope Records clearly had knowledge that Combs was dangerous around females and that Combs was willing to brazenly batter a female in public. Even after Mr. Iovine watched Mr. Combs commit a violent assault in front of numerous high-profile witnesses, the Bad Boys Interscope deal took place and remained in effect, providing Mr. Combs with immense financial rewards and enabling him to commit further acts of violence without fear of repercussions. I mean, yeah. But are they? I don't know how you can blame that on a completely independent company. He's not the owner of that company. But I get it. Like, why would you want to work with somebody that will punch somebody in front of everybody, and especially a lady that you're supposed to love? But I don't know if they would have the authority to give him consequences, because if he lost that deal, he would just go get another deal with someone else. Watching Mr. Combs openly assault Miss Ventura in front of Mr. Iovine and various celebrities, and observing that other powerful music industry representatives were complicit in Mr. Combs' behavior, amplified Miss Richards' fear that Mr. Combs could one day harm her and that his actions would be accepted and normalized by everyone surrounding him. As part of the agreement between Bad Boy and Interscope, Interscope heavily promoted Diddy Dirty Money, Last Train to Paris album. Mr. Iovine had presented Mr. Combs with a demo of Coming Home for him to produce a song that would become a multi-platinum hit. Mr. Iovine was encouraged by Mr. Combs to develop a new sound for the album, into which Interscope was investing significant resources. Miss Richard, Miss Harper, and Miss Ventura all provided vocal performances for the project. Released in November 2010, the album The Last Train to Paris became Diddy Dirty Money's most commercially successful project, providing vast financial rewards to both Interscope and Mr. Combs. Diddy Dirty Money, Mr. Combs subjects Miss Richard to labor trafficking and oppressive working conditions. So More of him not paying this lady. In or around the fall of 2009, Diddy Dirty Money began to record the song Love Comes Down. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs continued to use drugs that caused him to remain awake for prolonged periods of time. When he was awake, he would demand that Miss Richard, Miss Harper record in the studio, where they would spend 3 to 4 consecutive days recording without a break to eat or sleep. Mr. Combs required Miss Richard and Miss Harper to remain at his home continuously, denying the opportunity to return to their hotel rooms for breaks. The degree of control Mr. Combs exercised over Miss Richard's daily life and basic needs exacerbated the significant power imbalance and threatening atmosphere that ensured Miss Richard's compliance. Mr. Combs regularly left the studio while he left Harper and Richard to write songs. Whenever Miss Richard tried to leave, Mr. Combs would call and demand, "Where the F are you?" and make her come back. And then she would come back pretty quick because of his threats. Mr. Combs criticized Miss Richard for being too skinny, yet denied her request for food and demanded that she drink only peanut butter shakes. What? Mr. Combs had full meals prepared by a chef and ate them in front of Miss Richard and Miss Harper, never offering them any food. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. Miss Richard and Miss Harper begged for food and Miss Richard and Miss Harper begged for food and rest break, but Mr. Combs refused, making statements such as absolutely not. And this is what it takes to be great. Then why are you eating? If that's what it takes to be great, why are you eating? Why don't you get in here and write some verses? And this is maybe why he can't rap, because he didn't write his own songs. Mr. Combs' response underscored the threat he posed and heightened Miss Richard's concern for her safety and well-being. As Miss Richard continued to work nonstop, transitioning in between the studio rehearsals, workouts, and back to the studio, she became severely dehydrated and experienced chronic pain, cramping from being malnourished or undernourished and excessively thin. On the numerous occasions that she told Mr. Combs she was not feeling well, he called her lazy and dismissed her health concerns, instilling in her further apprehension from communicating her needs. In or around summer of 2010, Miss Richards experienced abdominal pain, swollen glands, and fever. She was hospitalized and diagnosed with arthralgia, joint pain due to overuse, sprains, tendonitis, and infection, anemia, and low white blood cell count. Miss Richard presented Combs with her medical records and specified that she needed to basically stay hydrated and well nourished. He basically ignored her and told her to get back to work. Miss Richard continued to witness Mr. Combs' abuse towards Miss Ventura. Miss Ventura often wore sunglasses and makeup in an attempt to hide visible injuries. This incident further solidified Miss Richard's fear that Mr. Combs, as they were constant reminders of the physical dangers she potentially could and eventually would face. Mr. Combs often exhibited uncontrollable anger during recording sessions, throwing objects like albums, laptops, and food against the wall or at individuals. Sir. Mr. Combs frequently flew into frenzied, unpredictable rages. Miss Richard feared making any misstep that could direct his anger towards her. However, her fears went beyond her immediate physical safety. Because she had witnessed Mr. Combs' violent nature, a side of Mr. Combs that the world had not yet seen, she feared that falling out of Mr. Combs' good graces, or worse, standing up to him or speaking out against him, could result in serious harm to her. Miss Richard frequently thought about Mr. Combs' threat about making people go missing and feared taking any action that could label her as a target. Despite Mr. Combs' violence, threats, and misogyny, Diddy Dirty Money experienced significant sales, selling 2 million copies of one single, 500,000 of another in the US, and 5 million, and in Australia, 5 million single copies. Miss Richards' unpaid wages and royalties are estimated to be $1.2 million. Miss Richard unpaid touring wages are estimated to be $350,000 for touring within the United States. And then she goes on to talk about Ciroc, Diddy beats, and non-payment. Essentially, Diddy was doing appearances for Ciroc where he was being paid $250,000 per appearance, and he was supposed to be paying Harper and Richard, but he did not pay them. and in fact only gave him like $5,000 on some occasions, Diddy ended up doing like 25 appearances and making $6.25 million. And Miss Richard says that she should have been paid at least $1,562,500 from that $6.25 million that Diddy was making in the appearances, because she was also performing and appearing on his behalf for those Ciroc parties. But Diddy was just keeping all of the money. Mr. Combs' SH and SA of Miss Richards. Between approximately 2009 and 2011, throughout Dirty Money's recording process, rehearsals and performances, Mr. Combs repeatedly ordered Miss Richards to strip down to her underwear. He frequently referred to her as a and made demeaning remarks about her body, alternately calling her lazy, fat, ugly, and skinny, particularly in front of friends, producers, and bodyguards. How is she fat and skinny? You got to pick one. You have got to pick one, sir. Mr. Combs frequently held meetings with Miss Richard wearing only his underwear, despite Miss Richard's protests and repeated requests for him to put on clothing. In response, Mr. Combs called her and reminded her that she should be grateful to be there. Sir, oh, sorry. Often while they were recording in the studio, Mr. Combs would hold parties where he would invite young men and women who were often scantily dressed and appeared underage to use drugs, engage in sex acts. So Miss Richard observed Mr. Combs and his colleague kissing, groping, and inappropriately touching the young women. Upon information and belief, the participants often left the immediate area to have sex and returned shortly thereafter. On numerous occasions between approximately 2009 and 2011, under the guise of preparing for performances, Mr. Combs would intrude into Miss Richards' changing room at Daddy's house unannounced while Miss Richards was undressed. Even though a female stylist was present and assisting Miss Richard with her wardrobe, Mr. Combs would grope Miss Richards' body, including her bare buttocks and chest near her breast, with no legitimate purpose and without Miss Richards' consent. Mr. Combs caressed her buttocks to show the stylist where he wanted her high-waisted panties positioned, and attempted to touch her breast, claiming to show the stylist where he wanted the bra straps to go. When Mr. Combs would enter the changing room, Miss Richard would cover her chest with her hands to prevent Mr. Combs from seeing or touching her breast. When Mr. Combs would touch her body, Miss Richard would attempt to swat his hand away and say, "Don't touch me." Mr. Combs frequently smacked Mr. Richard's bare buttocks and often commented on her body, noting that although she was skinny, she had a booty still. Ignoring her visible and communicated discomfort, Mr. Combs persisted and continued to intrude when Miss Richard was in the dressing room, continuing to touch her butt and her breast area, under the guise of showing the stylist what to do, and continued to smack her butt without consent. In or around 2010, Diddy Dirty Money performed in Glasgow, Scotland, where Mr. Combs engaged in overt sexual advances towards Miss Richard. On numerous occasions, Miss Richard exited the dressing room fully styled. Mr. Combs looked at her approvingly and smacked her butt while making comments such as, "You're looking good. Okay, Don, okay, I see what that is," in a flirtatious tone. Each time Miss Richard moved away and asked him not to touch her, but Mr. Combs disregarded her protest. On the last night in Glasgow, Miss Richard witnessed Mr. Combs and several other males gangbanging Mr. Combs' female assistants at the hotel pool. At the pool, Miss Richard immediately left and went to her home, into her hotel room. When they were on the flight, she asked where the assistant was, and he told her he didn't care. And then she later learned that Diddy took the assistant's passport and left her in the United Kingdom. Let me see. In Glasgow, Miss Harper confided in Miss Richard that her husband and manager, Tony Vick, was abusive after an especially severe assault. She confided in Miss Richard that she wanted to leave Mr. Vick, and Miss Richard helped her plan her exit from the relationship. However, Miss Harper and Mr. Vick reconciled, and both Mr. Combs and Mr. Vick, who had a close relationship, learned of Miss Richard's role in helping Miss Harper. Both Mr. Combs and Mr. Vick became noticeably distrustful of Miss Richard, which exacerbated her fears of harm and reprisal. That's why you don't I'm sorry, you can help other people, but you got to be willing to also face the wrath when you are helping other people. Um, okay. When Mr. Combs would require his When Mr. Combs would require his Diddy Dirty Money bandmates to stay at his residence in Miami, Miss Richard would barricade herself inside the room at night, placing heavy furniture against the door because she feared being harmed in her sleep. In around late December 2010, Miss Richard, Miss Harper, and Miss Ventura were in Mr. Combs' Los Angeles homes when Mr. Combs stated, "I want to gift you fake boobs for Christmas." Mr. Combs reached out and cupped Miss Richard's breast without her permission and stated, "You're an A, I'm thinking a D." Miss Richard recoiled and shocked and left the room. Throughout the above mentioned time period when Miss Richard resisted Mr. Combs' advances, Mr. Combs retaliated by denying her singer parts in songs, removing her from songs, refusing to allow her to sing in performances, and turning her microphone off during performances. The more Miss Richard rebuffed his advances, the more Combs' retaliatory behavior increased. Okay, and then we're gonna get into. I feel like I've been reading forever today. Okay, I think this is like the last section though, if I'm not mistaken. No, there's still one more section. Okay. There's still one more section, but we can kind of summarize that one. I'm tired of reading, y'all. I am. I am. Is he singing? Can y'all hear him? I think he is singing. Okay. Mr. Combs assaults and falsely imprisons Miss Richard. In or around December 2010, Diddy Dirty Money was preparing for an upcoming performance on Saturday Night Live. As usual, rehearsals lasted for days without the opportunity to eat or rest, and the rehearsal schedule was unpredictable. After waiting all day for Mr. Combs to call into the car, Miss Richard received a phone call from Mr. Combs demanding, "Where the F are you B words? You B words don't want this. You don't deserve to have someone pick you up. Get a cab." Miss Richard and Miss Harper immediately took a taxi to the studio and anxious because Mr. Combs sounded enraged. Upon their arrival to Sir's studio, Mr. Combs and Harve Pierre were waiting for them in the lobby. Mr. Combs screamed obscenities at them. "Where the F were you B words? You B words don't want to win. You don't want this. I'm so tired of y'all." Miss Richard noticed that people in the lobby were reacting to Mr. Combs' tirade. Embarrassed, Miss Richard asked Mr. Combs to stop swearing and calling them the B word in front of everyone. Mr. Combs' facial expression shifted as he stepped towards Miss Richard, raised his arm, and swung his fist towards her face. Believing that Mr. Combs was going to hit her, Miss Richard braced for the impact. Before Mr. Combs could strike her, Mr. Combs' bodyguard grabbed her, escorted her out of the studio, and forced her into the Bad Boy Records Bentley that was parked outside. Miss Harper ran after Miss Richard, and Mr. Combs' bodyguard closed and locked the Bentley door with both women inside. Inside the vehicle, Miss Richard realized there were no interior door handles and they were locked inside with no way to escape. Miss Richard's belongings were in the studio, but she was able to call her father from Miss Harper's cell phone. Miss Richard relayed to her father what happened and that she needed help and feared that she would go missing. Moments later, Mr. Combs' bodyguard removed only Miss Harper from the Bentley, leaving Miss Richard locked in the car alone for 2 hours. Miss Richard screamed so loud, as loudly as she could, but no one responded. And it was late. It was late evening in the wintertime. The windows were heavily tinted, and the interior of the car was dark, except for the fake interior lights. Miss Richard's belongings and winter coat were in the studio where the ignition was off and there was no heat. With Mr. Combs' prior threats of violence running through her mind, Miss Richard felt sheer panic, terror, and feelings of claustrophobia at being locked in a small, dark, enclosed space with no way to communicate or call for help. But she began to feel cold and fear for her life, not only when or if she would be released. She said there was no door handles inside. I was like, how is she locked in there? But I guess she said no door handles inside. Miss Richards' father drove to New York from Baltimore and arrived at the studio approximately 2 hours later. Only after her father arrived and demanded to see her did Mr. Pierre order Mr. Combs' bodyguards to release Miss Richard from the vehicle. Mr. Pierre ushered Miss Richard's father between several rooms at the Sir studio, where he waited for approximately 2 hours before being able to confront Mr. Combs. Once Miss Richard's father expressed that he intended to contact the police, Mr. Combs warned him to think about your family and think about your daughter's career. Her father appeared visibly frightened by Mr. Combs' threats and actions, which in turn made Miss Richard feel terrified for herself and her family's safety. The next night, Diddy Dirty Money performed on SNL. Mr. Combs subsequently called Miss Richard, complimented her performance, and concluded with a threat: "You don't call your dad unless you're in the hospital." Yeah, that would be the end of my working with him. She then goes on to say that he breached her contract and copyright infringement because he never paid her for songs that she wrote on it. And she goes on and lists all the songs. And also that he continues to distribute the music without paying her. So, like I said, y'all, this case was a lot of information. It did detail a lot of Cassie's issue, not her issues, but things that happened to Cassie, actually. Which is kind of bolstering why Don was actually afraid of Diddy versus like actual physical harm being done to her. It was kind of like threats and intimidation through harming someone else. And then, like I said, the SA in this case, although still SA, is not as intense as the other SA that we've experienced as far as performing sex acts on someone without their consent. This one was more of touching without her consent and then putting her on albums, but not really giving her the credit for the album. So let me know what y'all think about this. Like I said, it's a bunch of cases against him. I think she's going to be a good witness in the trial. I think everyone pretty much that filed their lawsuits are going to be good witnesses in the trial, depending on how they, perform on the stand, or not perform on the stand, but how they present on the stand. But she definitely has a lot of detail, and she actually worked with him for a long time, worked with him for a very long time as compared to the other people that may have had like one or two encounters with him. She went through years of this, just like Cassie went through years of it. So I thought that was interesting about this case. So yeah, let me know what y'all think. We are at 26 likes. I don't think we're going to meet our like goal for the live stream, but that's okay. We're still going to go ahead and have Bossy B bring us into the chat and see what y'all have to say about the lawsuit. All right. And again, shout out to Kimmy for starring the relevant chats for me. We got Deacon Fado saying to me, may I use this chat for school later? For sure. I can't stop you, honestly. Kimmy Locker says 19 and 37 is a gross age gap. 19 may be an adult, but it's still very much a child in my opinion. I definitely agree with that. I thought that he was like in his early 20s because before I did the math, but yeah, no, he was an old, not to be mean to anyone that's over 37, but compared to her, he was an old man and he had no business being even attracted to her. But based on what a lot of people are bringing up in their lawsuits, he clearly was attracted to little girls. A lot of people saying whether the girls were actually underage or not, that they appeared to be underage. So that is strange. He's a strange man. And that's all I can say. Just Me MD says, I believe he forced Cassie into a relationship for sure. In my opinion, for sure. Kimmy Locker says, I have no clue who Kalina Harper is. I don't know, but apparently she was part of Dirty Money. But like I said, I didn't know Dirty Money existed. So maybe I'm not the right person to be covering the case. Just Me MD says, realistically, will any of these victims see a dime of compensation? I don't know. That's what I was talking about earlier. Like, yes, he is a billionaire, but how much of that billionaire is also counting his debt, right? Are we just talking about like the value of his houses? He did just pay off the Miami house. He's working on selling the LA house. He's working on selling his plane. But my question with everybody that's on his payroll, and then the fact that he has the criminal case that will require him to forfeit any money that he acquired through these crimes. Again, I don't know how they're going to necessarily tie it to those specific crimes. If the government takes all the money, maybe they might use it for restitution in the civil cases. But I don't know. I really don't know if they're going to get compensation. And then he's in jail. So these cases, they're probably not really going to move forward because he's in jail, right? Which hence probably why everyone wanted to get their claims in towards the beginning versus being kind of at the tail end, maybe to kind of reserve their spot for the restitution that's coming out of the criminal case. I don't know. I could be making stuff up, but yeah. Amy Locker says, doubt it. Kimmy Lockett says, yeah, abusers like this definitely know how to choose the victims, enablers, and co-conspirators, and having the money and fame Diddy did just made it easier. Yeah, I agree with that, because you're not going to invite boss attorney Bree, because I'm telling everybody, and I'm calling you weird. And if you want to beat me up because of that, then you're just going to have to beat me up because of it. But I'm going to call you weird and tell you that you're doing weird things and you're a creep. And I might get beat up. I'm okay with that. And after you beat me up, I'ma tell. Okay, I'm going to tell. You're going to jail. Daddy, if you had told my daddy be, you better think about your family, that would have been like, you better think about yours. Okay. Don't play with me. Don't play with me. Okay. All right. So I'm sorry, but I agree, Kimmy. They definitely know how to pick their victims for sure. Kimmy Lockett says, if that's love, I don't want it. Exactly. No one. You should not be treating no one like that, especially not the person that you love. Now, if somebody's playing with you on the street and they're trying to fight you, then yeah, you do all of that. But if you just don't treat people like that for no reason. Nissa Howard says, this definitely grooming. I would agree. Kimmy Lockett says, I can't get over how long he was able to reign terror on so many people. And that's why I'm like, the Cassie situation and this situation was the longest situations. Everyone else was kind of like 1 to 2 interactions, maybe a couple of interactions. But this was over a course of years. This was from 2004 to at least, when did she stop? 2022. I think I skipped over this. She was supposed to be a part of making the band in 2020. So she continued to have some type of professional relationship with him over the course of what would that be? 15 years? She continued to have some type of professional relationship with him. So I wouldn't, you doing too much from the jump of things. I don't think I would have been able to remain in the industry, and I might have had to find something else to do at that point. But like I said, I don't know. You never know what you would do when you're the one in the situation. But no, I'm telling. I'm telling. Sorry, I would just be blackballed from the industry because I'm going to tell. So anyways, y'all, that is all I have for the live stream. Unfortunately, we did not hit our like goal today, but that is okay. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and I will see y'all all on the next live stream. Bye.